How do our emotions interfere with the choices we make? Well, first of all, they do. Emotions really affect the way our brains think through things. It's also useful to know that there are 6 basic emotions, though there are several exceptions. The 6 basic emotions are anger, disgust, happiness, sadness, surprise, and fear. An extra one would be anticipation, which is the feeling of having expectations or just expecting things in general. Though it isn't labeled as an emotion, I'd like to think pity would be an emotion as well. This is because pity can control the choices that you make. When I feel bad for someone for any reason, I give in and try to help that person out in any way I can. If I didn't pity them, it would be less likely for me to help that person out. Due to pity, I often find that I put others ahead of myself, which is okay to a certain extent. Moving on, it helps to understand the impact of emotions through real-life experiences. For example, the other day I asked Mr. Fee if there was any way I could get an A in science by the end of the year, in which he replied, "I'm sorry, that's not possible." You guys know that this is a high school class, so it's kind of a big deal to have a good grade if you're gonna be taking it on your high school transcript. So I was sad, upset, devastated, disappointed, really disappointed. So I cried. Aww. It sucked, but that's just what happened. Congratulations, Mr. Fee. You made me cry. Here, you can have my science fair medal. No, I'm just kidding, this is mine. Anyway, feeling sad about this drove me into making decisions that I would not normally make. First, I wanted to isolate myself, so I did my best to avoid everyone I could. When I could tell someone was staring at me, I forced myself not to make eye contact. I didn't want to have a conversation with anyone. Second, I wasn't motivated in orchestra, and I didn't feel like practicing, and it continued. In video journalism, I smiled occasionally only so no one would ask if I was feeling down. The smiles were not sincere at all. I did not want to go to science. I thought that since I couldn't get an A in the class, there was no point in trying. I just wanted to go home. And that's the kind of impact your emotions can have on you. They can lead you into making subconscious decisions that you would not normally make. On a normal day, I hate being alone, I hate not being able to talk to anyone, I love orchestra, and I enjoy being in science. And this is because the feeling of sadness causes you to crave isolation. Which, by the way, very few people get over being sad by isolating themselves. It actually really helps to engage with others and be with friends. I'm sure that some of you have made decisions, or maybe thought about making decisions, that are unsuited for you when you feel a certain way, like when you're upset or you're sad. But going back into the 6 emotions, each one usually corresponds to the same outcome. Like with sadness, you have the urge to stay alone, even though that's not really that great for you. The positive side of being sad, at least for me, is that it inspires me to create things. After Mr. Fee made me cry, I figured out a real-life experience that I could relate my project to. So that's kind of a win. I'm getting a little sidetracked, okay. Anger corresponds to people doing things that they'll usually regret later. Fear can hold you back from doing something that could be really awesome. Happiness, especially too much of it, can make you overlook risk. Disgust can lead you into hurting someone's feelings. Surprise is a little tricky because people often react different to surprises. It's more of a personal preference depending on whether you like surprises or not. So like I said before, emotions can lead to a repeating outcome. Next up is peer pressure. I'm sure that most of you already know about peer pressure affecting the choices that you make, but peer pressure also provokes emotions that causes you to act different in different situations. So the focus question of this is, what emotion does peer pressure induce? It took me some time to fully grasp this, but fear is linked with peer pressure. The fear of not fitting in, the fear of everyone judging you because you're not doing what everyone else wants you to do. It can cause you to do things that you may not want to do, which is not okay. Now into the more sciencey stuff. The main part of the brain that controls emotions is called the amygdala, though the prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum help as well. Now the amygdala is also linked with storing memories, which is a huge factor in decision making. When you have memories of the past, say you made a decision that was totally unforgettable, before making that same mistake again, you'd probably remember it and then you would avoid doing it. This really kind of shows the impact of emotions on your decisions because the amygdala is prime in controlling emotions. Giving more of an overview, emotions control our choices by leading us into making decisions that would be beneficial in the given time, though they may not be so great in the long run. Good short term, not so good long term. When making important decisions, it's better to make a logical choice over an emotional choice. Chances are the logical one will help you more later on. It can be hard to make logical choices fast though because the prefrontal cortex reacts really quickly. It takes around 1/10 of a second, maybe even less, to get the prefrontal cortex going. It's also extremely common for emotional choices to override logical choices. Because once again, emotional choices seem more appealing even though logical choices are more beneficial. Emotions also interfere with what we choose to eat. When you're feeling down, you're probably gonna crave some unhealthy food like a tub of ice cream or just any unhealthy food. Where if you're kind of emotion neutral, you'd probably go for some kind of savory food. Emotional eating is also known as stress eating. This is because you're not eating because you're hungry, you're eating because you need comfort or you need a comfort food, which is not a good thing either. You might feel sick later due to the amount of food intake. This relates back to the topic of emotional choices working short term and not long term. So before stress eating, think about the effect it'll have on you afterwards. To summarize, your emotions can control what you eat and can often lead you into making choices that aren't the best. It's always a good idea to think twice or maybe even 3 times before making a lasting decision. Controlling your emotions is essential in doing what's best for you and keeping yourself out of trouble. Keep that in mind next time you have to make a hard choice.